Most people don't overtrade because they love trading. They overtrade because doing nothing feels like failure to them. Our entire lives, we're trained to believe that action equals progress. And even when you escape the conventional system, hustle culture gives you the exact same religion, just with better branding. Then you enter the market where the best decision might be to make one intelligent investment and spend the next 3 years refusing to interfere with it. That feels wrong. Honestly, it can feel irresponsible, and that psychological conflict explains far more about day trading than most people realize. Because a lot of people aren't trading to make money. They're trading to feel in control. In most areas of life, effort and output have some kind of visible relationship. It makes sense. You're taught that motion is evidence that you're being productive. But investing completely breaks that relationship. You can spend 12 hours researching something and still lose money. Another person can make one good decision, close the laptop, and outperform you while doing almost nothing. The market doesn't care how tired you are. It doesn't care how many charts you looked at. It doesn't reward you for effort. It rewards you for being exposed to the right asset with the right size for long enough. At a job, time is exchanged for income. In investing, time is what allows a thesis to become an outcome, but only if you stop interrupting it, and that is an incredibly difficult adjustment to make because it forces you to separate work from visible activity. Sometimes the work is researching, buying, and sometimes the work is leaving the position alone. So you have the nurture side telling you to take action, produce, prove that you're working. Then you have the human nature pulling in the same direction. We like immediate feedback, we like novelty, and we really like feeling as though we have control over an uncertain situation. Behavioral finance has a name for this part, and it's called action bias. When we don't know what's going to happen, doing something often feels safer than doing nothing, even when the action doesn't actually improve the outcome. And a trade gives you an immediate emotional receipt. You bought it, then you sold, you rotated, you protected profits, you cut the position, you did something, right? Even if it was a bad decision, it can feel better than no decision because at least the uncertainty has been converted into action. That's why I think a lot of trades are not really portfolio decisions. They're attempts to regulate emotions. You're uncomfortable, so you move. You're bored, so you move. The price drops, so you feel helpless, so you move. The price rises, you're scared of losing the gain, so you move. And every time you click the button, you get a brief sense that you've taken control back. Whether the trade was intelligent becomes secondary. Combine a lifetime of being rewarded for activity with a brain that wants novelty, feedback, and control. Then place that person inside a market that runs 24 hours a day. That's how you end up with day trading. And crypto specifically takes this problem even further because trading isn't only financial here, it's social. The entire social layer rewards visible activity. You call a coin, you post the entry, you post the screenshot win, then you predict your next move. And you announce the rotation before everybody else, then you do it again tomorrow. There's always something new to talk about because there's always something new to trade. But imagine posting this every day. I'm still holding the same investment, nothing has changed. That doesn't generate much engagement. Nobody treats you like a genius because you held the same position through another boring week. There's no instant social reward for saying, I own one thing I understand deeply. I don't know what happens next month, and I'm fine with that because I've built up my own first principles conviction. So people begin breadcrumbing wins across dozens of assets, 10% here, 30% there, caught this move, sold that top, bought this dip. Every small win becomes proof that they're informed, active, and ahead of the market. But there's a major difference between being right frequently and making serious money. Your portfolio rewards magnitude. One truly asymmetric winner that you understand and hold can matter more than a year of clever little trades, even a decade. But the clever little trades generate more content, they generate more validation, they let you be visibly right more often, and they protect you socially because the person holding 30 assets can always find one winner to post. The highly concentrated investor has nowhere to hide. He has one thesis, one position, one reputation attached to it, and if nothing happens for a year, he looks inactive. If the price falls, he looks wrong. And if he says he doesn't know exactly when the market will agree with him, people assume he has no edge. There is almost no social incentive in crypto to be highly selective, deeply concentrated, and indifferent to short-term timing, which is exactly why that can become a significant edge. Now, long-term investing asks you to accept something that is almost completely antithetical to the human condition. You have to resign control over the timetable. You can control what you buy, you can control why you buy it, the size of the position, and you can decide what evidence would prove your thesis wrong, but you cannot control when the market notices. You cannot force adoption. You cannot force liquidity to arrive. You cannot force other people to understand what you understand, and you cannot schedule the moment when an asset goes from ignored to obvious. That's why sitting on an investment can be so psychologically painful, because you've made a decision and your money is exposed, but now there's nothing left to do except wait for a process you don't control. A flat chart starts to feel like rejection, silence begins to feel like evidence that you're wrong, and every new asset moving somewhere else feels like the market personally reminding you that you could be making money right now. So you leave, not necessarily because the thesis changed. You leave because nothing happened quickly enough to keep rewarding your nervous system. A lot of investors don't sell when the thesis breaks. They sell when their patience breaks and the trade gives them immediate relief. They're moving again. They have a new story, a new chart. They have a new possibility. And the anxiety disappears temporarily because uncertainty has been replaced by activity. But that emotional relief can be extremely expensive. Meme coins make this conflict even more extreme because if your thesis is based on social durability, community growth, cultural relevance, or the long-term expansion of a network, the outcome is probably not going to develop in a clean and linear way. There may be long periods where nothing happens, the chart goes sideways, attention moves to other things. People mock the asset, the community shrinks down to whoever actually believes in it. Then sometimes the entire thing reprices very quickly. That is the kind of outcome people claim they're looking for when they talk about finding a 50 times or 100 times investment. But here's the contradiction. People say they want 100 times return, but their nervous system wants a 20% win by Friday. They want a long-term asymmetric outcome with a short-term emotional feedback loop, and those two things are incompatible. You cannot capture a long-duration outcome with a 15-minute psychology. That asset may need years to develop. Your dopamine cycle wants 20 minutes, so every time the investment gets boring, you rotate. Every time another chart starts moving, you chase it. Every time the market questions your thesis, you ask the price to tell you whether you're still intelligent, and eventually you trade yourself out of the exact type of outcome you originally entered the market to find. That doesn't mean concentration is always the right bet. It doesn't mean you blindly hold every collapsing token forever, and it doesn't mean conviction can rescue a bad asset, but it does mean that if your entire thesis depends on long-term community persistence, you cannot evaluate it through low time frame price movement. You have to judge the thing you actually invested in. Is the community still producing? Are people still showing up? Is the culture spreading? Is ownership improving? Are the reasons you bought becoming stronger or weaker? Those are the thesis questions. A red candle is not automatically a thesis answer. Now, let me be clear. Doing nothing does not mean turning your brain off. It does not mean ignoring evidence, and it does not mean marrying a position because selling would hurt your ego. Doing nothing has to be earned. Most of the work should happen before you enter that asset. Before I personally buy something for the long term, I want 4 questions answered. What exactly do I believe? What would prove me wrong? How long should this thesis reasonably take? And what size can I hold without needing the market to reassure me every day? Now, that last question is important because people often think they have a conviction problem when they actually have a sizing problem. If your position is so large that every 10% move changes your emotional state, you're going to interfere with it. You haven't created the conditions required for you to hold. Now, once the investment is made, your job changes. You're no longer hunting for a decision every day. You're protecting a good decision from unnecessary interference. Now, you still want to be doing research. You still can monitor the thesis. You can update your understanding, but observation does not have to produce a transaction. The price is information. It is not an instruction. Absence of a trade does not mean there was absence of thought. That isn't laziness, that's restraint, and restraint is an active investing skill. This is also where the phrase stop trading and believe in something from the SPX community can be misunderstood. Real conviction is falsifiable. You know why you're in, you know what would make you leave, and until one of those conditions changes, you refuse to let every low time frame movement become a new referendum on the entire idea. Patience without a thesis is bag holding, but a thesis without patience is just content. You're talking about investment that you never gave enough time to understand. Stop trading and believe in something means stop outsourcing your conviction to every candle. Stop requiring the market to validate you every morning, and stop confusing activity with intelligence. Stop assuming because you touched your portfolio, you improved it. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is admit, I don't control when this happens, and then you just sit still. Everybody is being conditioned in the opposite direction. They want more information, they want more assets, more calls, more rotations, more visible proof that they're doing something. So what you need to do is zig when they zag. When everybody else needs to predict the next 15-minute candle, be willing to say, I don't know what happens next week. I know what I own. And when everybody else owns 30 things so they can always point to a winner, be willing to understand a small number of those things deeply. And when everybody else treats boredom as a signal to leave, recognize that boredom is often the price of being early. The hardest flex in markets isn't calling every move. It's owning something you understand, admitting you can't control the timetable, and refusing to perform intelligence for social media. It doesn't pay you for how many decisions you make. You get paid for the quality of your judgment and the size of your exposure and whether you're still there when that outcome finally arrives. The thing is that doing nothing feels counterintuitive because you were trained to associate effort with progress. But in investing, patience is effort, restraint is effort. Sitting through boredom without inventing a reason to sabotage your thesis is effort. You don't need more trades. You may need one idea good enough and a process strong enough to survive your own urge to interfere with it. So stop trading and believe in something. The market doesn't reward you for how many decisions you make. It rewards you for the few good decisions you have the discipline to not interrupt.